It appears in the Nikayas that only the Sotapan did not need strong concentration, whereas the others, Sakadagami, Anagami, and Arahant, they do need strong concentration. But that state now also very near jhana already, what they call Upachara Samadhi. You see, this thing, people talk as if it's like entering a door and coming out of a door. You see, our thoughts are going so fast that one moment you are in jhana, one moment you are not in jhana. It can be very fast. Sometimes, even when a person has one-pointedness of mind, sometimes still some thoughts will come, because you have not allowed yourself to sort of completely absorb in that state. So the purpose actually of this jhana, one-pointedness of mind, is to make your mind so strong that you can abide in this, what they call Upachara Samadhi, threshold concentration. Threshold concentration is a state very near the jhanas, but it is useful because you can contemplate and you can attain in using Upachara Samadhi, threshold concentration. But if you don't cultivate the one-pointedness of mind, the jhanas, you don't have enough strength, In the Visuddhimagga, they give a simile of a person who attains Upachara Samadhi, like a small baby trying to stand. The small baby, the legs are very weak. The first time he stands up, he cannot stand up long. He will topple, sit down. He stands up a short while only, then he has to sit down. Yes or not? So that is what happens when a person's mind has not been trained to be strong enough. So if you don't attain the jhanas, when you try to use this Upachara Samadhi, because at the state of Upachara Samadhi, you can contemplate and still the hindrances are not there. That's why the Upachara Samadhi is the most useful state, right? But it's very near jhana. So, if you don't have a higher concentration than Upachara Samadhi, you have not developed your concentration to be higher than Upachara Samadhi, you are always in Kanika Samadhi and sometimes in Upachara Samadhi. So when you attain Upachara Samadhi, you are like the small baby trying to stand on its legs. No strength, you fall down again. So when you try to use Upachara Samadhi, you cannot use it because you are not able to abide in it, Right? You are in there and then you fall down again. How to use it? How to make it useful? Whereas if you are used to a higher concentration, when you come down to Upachara Samadhi, you are very strong. No problem. You just stay in there as long as you like. You can use it as long as you like. That's why you need to cultivate a higher concentration. My question is, if the jhanas is such a superior state, will give you wisdom, mindfulness and equanimity and all that. Now, why is it when the Buddha was following the two external sect teachers, he did not get enlightenment? I explained in my previous talk that the Aryan Eightfold Path consists of 8 factors. And there's a difference between right concentration in Buddhism and right concentration in the external teaching. In the external sect, concentration might be the jhanas, but in the Buddha's teaching, the Aryan right concentration or the noble right concentration or the Buddhist right concentration is the 4 jhanas supported by the 7 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Only when these 8 work together that you will end suffering, that you will get liberation. It doesn't mean you just use one thing, only the right concentration. No. One of the 8 factors doesn't get you anywhere. You must have all 8 working together. That's why I mentioned that some people say, even Devadatta has got all the jhanas and still he didn't have the wisdom. Then I said, Devadatta, to begin with, he had wrong view. He didn't have right view. And because of wrong view, he had wrong thoughts. And because of wrong thoughts, he wanted to kill the Buddha. How can such a person become an Arahant? Yes or not? Buddha's suttas, the Buddha set a very high standard for a monk to teach the Dhamma, One of the standards he set was that a monk really needs to be an arahant before he can teach the Dhamma. There's one standard mentioned in Lohicha Sutta in the Digha Nikaya. The other standard which was mentioned by the Buddha was a person should attain jhana before he can teach. In other words, the Buddha mentioned like if a person can teach jhana to somebody else, then only he is qualified to teach. So, you see, because these standards are so high, nowadays maybe it's very difficult to get a monk who can comply with this type of standard. But because it's very difficult to get a monk to attain up to this type of standard to teach, monks who are not up to that standard can teach because there's no other people to teach. But the point is, because the Buddha has set the standard, it shows that you need to be very, very clear about the Dhamma Vinaya before you can teach. You see? Otherwise, if you teach something wrong, you are creating very, very bad karma for yourself. It's stated very clearly, in the, I think, Anguttara Nikaya. The Buddha said, if a person says, teaches this wrong Dhamma, he's creating extremely bad karma for himself. So, because of that, we need to be very, very careful, We need to investigate a lot, and be quite sure what we teach. So I think this anybody who thinks of teaching, he must study the four Nikayas and be very clear about the four Nikayas before he can teach. Otherwise, you start teaching from the commentary and from the Abhidhamma and all these things, and then you lead people the wrong way. And not only that, you cause the disappearance of the true Dhamma, Because the Buddha said that is what happens when you start teaching wrong Dhamma. Then people start attaching to wrong Dhamma. Then they will cause the disappearance of the true Dhamma. The Buddha said there are 5 things that will cause the disappearance of the true Dhamma. And the Buddha said the true Dhamma does not disappear suddenly, like the sinking of a ship. A ship, when it sinks very suddenly. But the Buddha said, the disappearance of the true Dhamma will come about gradually. And 5 things cause the disappearance of the true Dhamma. 1, people have no respect for the Buddha. In other words, like some people, they don't, although they call themselves Buddhists, they don't acknowledge our Buddha to be their real teacher. They acknowledge somebody else to be their teacher and pay respect to somebody else. Number 2, you don't respect the Dhamma, meaning the true Dhamma. You go and refer probably maybe to the commentaries or some other books, rather than the Buddha's words. And this the Buddha already stated in the Samsutta. The Buddha said in the future, people will not want to listen to the discourses of the Buddha. Instead of investigating the discourses of the Buddha himself, the Buddha said, people in the future would rather go and read the works of his disciples, works of other monks. And the Buddha called them this a mere poetry compared to the Buddha's deep discourses. So the third one, the Buddha said, people start to have less or no respect for the Sangha. The fourth one that will cause the disappearance of the true Dhamma is when people have no respect for the training. Like some people, the training means the cultivation of the Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Just like some people, if you try to cultivate, they say you are a selfish fellow. You're only trying to look after yourself. You should help other people instead of cultivating yourself. But the Buddha said, you can't help other people before you help yourself. So cultivation is one thing they will have no respect. The last one, not surprisingly, is samadhi, The Buddha said, in the future, people will have no respect for samadhi, meaning the 4 jhanas. They rather teach some other thing, saying that jhanas are not necessary. This itself will cause the disappearance of the true Dhamma. That is why I always like to talk against people who try to teach that there is such a thing as a dry vision Arahant. Dry vision Arahant is a no vision Arahant. You can't see anything. The question is whether these external sect ascetics, when they come to listen to the Buddha's Dhamma and then they become Arahants, does it mean that they have come out of the 4 jhanas and it must be, because when you are listening to the Buddha, you can't be in jhana. When you are in jhana, you cannot listen to the Buddha. Your mind is not there, right? Firstly. The other thing is, I did mention earlier that when a person attains the jhana, strong concentration, the hindrances are abandoned. Even when you're out of jhana, the mind is quite clear. I mentioned just now the sutta where the Buddha said, the anagami has got perfect sila and perfect samadhi. The arahant has got perfect sila, samadhi and panya. So how to find an arahant who does not have perfect samadhi? And also in the Aryavasa Sutta, the Buddha said, all Aryas of the past, present and future, they abide in 10 Dhammas. One of them is the breathless stage, the 4th jhana. In this case, probably the Buddha is speaking more of the Arahant. The question was, there are some monks who write based on their own experiences. So, should we not read their books? Now, I mentioned earlier that first you have to study the 4 Nikayas of the Buddha, because the Buddha said to take refuge in the Buddha. The Buddha did not say, the Buddha said, Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. The Buddha didn't say, Achan Saranang Gacchami, or Sayadaw Saranang Gacchami, or Tero Saranang Gacchami, right? So our teacher is the Buddha. So we study the 4 Nikayas, and after we have understood the 4 Nikayas, if we study any other book, we can see clearly whether that person is teaching according to the Dhamma or he is not teaching. For example, there are some books, and I also heard some tapes, of certain monks who talk about their experience. And they say they entered jhana, and they say the jhana is like a sleeping state. They even say when they are in jhana, they don't know. But when they come out of jhana, then they know they are in jhana. What kind of jhana is that? If you don't know when you are in jhana, then how do you differentiate between 1st jhana and 2nd jhana and 3rd jhana and 4th jhana? And then you find, like it contradicts the sutta. The Buddha said, your complete purity of mindfulness. So if you don't know the sutta, you can be led astray, People can say out of their own experience, they experience this and they experience that. If that person is an Arahant, then we believe him. But if he's not an Arahant, how can your experience count compared to the Buddha? I had such high regard for the jhanas that there is one sutta where the Buddha said, when a person attains the 1st jhana, he has gone to the other shore. He is cool. Gone to the other shore is paragata, I think. Paragata, gone to the other shore. And that is normally reserved for nibbana, a person who has attained arahanthood. Then only he has gone to the other shore. And cool, nibbutta, is a synonym for nibbana. And the Buddha used that for the 1st jhana itself. Buddha said a person who has attained the first jhana, he has already crossed to the other shore, and he is cool. And that is found, I think, in the Anguttara Nikaya. You see, such high regard the Buddha had for jhana. And now people are saying the opposite. Don't go and practice jhana. Stupid, you become stupid. This is about Samatha, Samatha jhana and Vipassana jhana. In the Buddha's teaching, there is no such thing. These are all new creations. I have heard actually a tape by a person who seems to have attained all the jhanas. And this person happens to be a nun. And her description of the jhanas and the insights that arise from the jhanas are very clear. And she says that the arupa jhanas are actually the vipassana jhanas. And she explained very clearly why. She said when you attain to boundless space, the mind opens up so wide. Then you realize that there is no differentiation into this being and that being. Everything is all mind. And all the other beings, everything in the universe is just like sparks of energy, moving to and fro, all energy. In fact, everything is energy in the universe. So when a person attains to that kind of jhana, when he comes out of that jhana, the insight is very deep, very profound. That there is actually no differentiation between you and me and I and him and all that. And then like the boundless consciousness also, then he realizes that everything is mine. And then that nothingness. And nothingness means that there is no such thing as a being. There is no thing that is permanent in the universe. Everything is just energy. That's why you cannot find anything. I mean, there's nothing. And those type of jhana, arupa jhana, if you call them vipassana jhana, that is justified because it gives you very profound insight. But to talk about vipassana jhana without abandoning the hindrances is the Buddha in the Majjhima Nikaya. The Buddha said he does not praise any meditation where the hindrances are not suppressed, are not abandoned. So basically your question is how to get consistency in your meditation. You see, every time we meditate, we sit very straight and we try to concentrate our mind. Something is happening on the mental side as well as something is happening on the physical side. Your body, as you meditate, the energy flows, and according to yoga, there's an electric current that goes along the spine, right up to the top. And this is logical. So, every time we meditate, if you can sit longer, it's even better. And we are made out of habit patterns. So when we meditate, we are sort of programming into our mind certain signal. And if we do it again, a certain impression is made in our body and in our mind. And we have to do it constantly so that it becomes a habit. And when it becomes a habit, it's very easy to get it going. You can liken the meditation practice to boiling water. If you want to boil water, say the old-fashioned way last time when we were young, you put wood and all these things, then you have to use the fan and fan the fire and watch the fire, charcoal and all these things. So when the fire gets going, the water starts to warm up. And when the water starts to warm up, sometimes you can hear some sound, right? Some sound. Sometimes if you open the lid, you find the bubble coming up. Okay? So if you are very curious, you start watching the bubble and you start listening to the sound, you forget to fan, So you forget to fan, the water will cool down. And if it cools down completely, then the bubble also would have disappeared, the sound also would have disappeared. And then you'll have to start the fire and all over again, start from the beginning. So it's the same with meditation. If we meditate and our meditation progresses and we get concentration, some people may start to see visions, see some light, some brightness, and some color, and some vision, some imaginary things and all that. If you start getting interested in those things, you start observing those things, you forgot about your meditation subject. And when you forget about your meditation subject, it's like forgetting to fan the fire, Slowly your concentration will cool down. And your concentration cools down, all that vision disappeared, and then you have to start all over again. But if you want to see the vision, and you want it to persist, you can, you just pay a bit of attention to it, but don't let your attention run away from your breath, from your object of meditation. You keep on your mindfulness on your object of meditation. And once in a while, you have a peep, have a look, and get some pleasure if you like out there. Don't let your mindfulness run away. The water will get hotter like that. Then you might see more things. But the important thing is in our meditation practice to do it as often as you can. Basically, every morning and every night, at least have one sit. If you can keep up the morning and your night meditation non-stop, you can slowly progress. Because as a lay person, you don't have very much time. But you try to make it a point every morning and every night, at least half an hour. At least half an hour, you sit. Then you get some energy going in your system, which the more you do, it becomes stronger. Question is, how does the Vipassana or Satipatthana practice tie up with the jhana, right? In my previous talk, I also did mention this. What I said earlier also was that Sati or Satipatthana is not separate from jhana. Because in the sutta, it is stated that the Aryan Eightfold Path, the first factor will lead you to the second. The second will lead you to the third. In other words, right view will give you right thoughts very naturally. And right thoughts will give you right speech, which will give you right action. And right action will give you right livelihood, will give you right effort, will give you right mindfulness. And right mindfulness, if you practice correctly, must give you right concentration. Because right mindfulness, if you maintain it as much as you can, it will turn into concentration. Concentration and mindfulness, they are very much related. If you pursue your mindfulness, your practice of mindfulness, it will turn into concentration. And concentration in turn will make you more mindful. It supports mindfulness. That's why in the sutta it's stated that if the practice of mindfulness will give you concentration. And when you have concentration, you will automatically have satipatthana. Because it is stated in the Majjhima Nikaya that the characteristic mark of samadhi or jhana is satipatthana. Because satipatthana means intense state of mindfulness, not ordinary mindfulness, intense state of mindfulness. And there is one sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya where the Buddha said, a person practices sati, and then he abandons the hindrances, and then he pursues this practice into the practice of satipatthana. Then, in other words, he tries to be intensely mindful, and then he will get the jhanas. And when he gets the jhanas, the Satipatthana becomes automatic. That's why, as I mentioned in the Samyutta Nikaya Sutta, the Buddha said, you practice Satipatthana to attain it. You try to attain Satipatthana. But when you have attained Satipatthana, the Buddha said, abandon the practice. But in spite of the fact of abandoning the practice, the Buddha still says that his disciples, Seka and Aseka, Arahant and the learners, constantly abide in Satipatthana. When they have not attained, they practice Satipatthana to attain. When they have attained, then they don't practice anymore because it is automatic. When I was following the Mahayana Buddhism, I read a story about a Zen master, Chan Se. He had his disciples and new disciples. So he told his disciples, you all must be very mindful. When you eat slowly, walk slowly, speak slowly. Do everything slowly. So his disciples try to follow. But his disciples look at him and then they were not very happy. They said, Master, why you ask us to do everything very mindfully and very slowly, but you seem to do things very fast. Don't seem to be very mindful. So the master said, how can you compare with me? You see? And that master has got automatic Satipatthana. He don't have to make the effort to be mindful. Whatever he does, fast or slow, he knows what he's doing. That's not. The Buddha said that the Sotapanna and the Sakadagamin, the first and second fruition person, has got perfect sila. The basic precepts are very pure. The Anagami has got perfect sila and samadhi. That means the Anagami must have the 4 jhanas. That's why he's reborn in the 4th jhana plane. The Arahant has got perfect sila, samadhi and panya. So the Arahant also must have the 4 jhanas. And in the sutta, we find generally that the Sotapanna, he attains Sotapanna just by listening to the suttas. Just by listening to the Buddha's words, he becomes a Sotapanna. And the Buddha explained why in one of the suttas. He said, when you listen to Dhamma and you pay attention, you pay close attention, the Buddha said the 5 hindrances are abandoned. And the 7 bojjhanga go to completion at that time. So, or the 7, the hindrances are suppressed, I'm not sure the word. So at that time, you can understand why a person listening to Dhamma can attain Sotapanna. So that's why I advise people, if you think of just attaining Sotapanna, don't think of meditating. Go and study the 4 Nikayas. If you study the 4 Nikayas, you save up some money, buy the 4 Nikayas, and study it again and again, you have a very good chance of attaining Sotapanna. It's only the Sakadagamin onwards, you find that he needs concentration. The Sakadagamin, the difference with the Sotapanna is that he has suppressed the sensual lust and the ill will. So that's why Sakadagami onwards, you need concentration. Whereas the Sotapanna is always in the sutta, just by listening to the discourses, that they become Sotapanna. So you can see how important the discourses are. Because we have seen instances of people who meditate for many years, 20 over years, and still they give up Buddhism and change their religion because their Dhamma base is not strong enough. Surprisingly, if you read the sutta, a person, you see, when a person enters cessation of perception and feeling, all the consciousness has stopped, And that is the actually experience of Nibbana. And when the person comes out of it, most of the time, after contemplation, he will become an Arahant. But surprisingly, in the sutta, it's also mentioned, there are some people, Even after they attain cessation of perception and feeling, the very experience of Nibbana itself, and they come out of it, they don't become Arahant, Why? If you think about it, probably their Dhamma base is not good enough. Their understanding of Dhamma is not good enough.